What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and we just had an insane week 2 of NFL football. We had the Dolphins-Ravens game. We had my Jets getting a W out here. Huge week for the boy. We're going to cover all of that and more, all of the biggest fantasy notes from week 2. Let's not waste any time. We have 10 takeaways to get into here. As always, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you get down below, subscribe, leave a like. Let's go.
Thirsty, trying to choose. I know I'm critical. My nitty bag.
Now, our first takeaway here is almost a piggyback on what we talked about last Monday, and I didn't want to put it in here again, but I'm so blown away by Mike Mcdaniel that I have to put it in here. Mike McDaniel is a god, is my first takeaway, and really what it comes down to with Mike McDaniel is I think you can almost, I don't want to be too premature here, but in terms of offensive play calling, situational football, I'm not sure if he's in this tier yet, but he's right there with the, McVays, Shanahans, Dables, Andy Reid's, Bill Belichick's. He's knocking on the door of that top 5 of NFL coaches who are extremely good at their jobs, make good play calls on offense, play the way you're supposed to play by the numbers. He comes back down 35-14 on the road in Baltimore, outscores the Ravens 28-3 in the fourth quarter. This is against Lamar Jackson throwing his best stuff. He was looking amazing in this game, had like 40-plus fantasy points, and Mike McDaniel just stayed in the pocket and looked amazing. And I know it doesn't sound great to give a lot of praise to Mike McDaniel here when Tua looks so great, right? Tua is also, responsible for this win, and that's 100% true. But in years past, Tua threw 2 interceptions early here. Other coaches were pulling Tua, putting in Ryan Fitzpatrick. If those coaches were still here, maybe they pull him and put in Teddy Bridgewater at half, and this game just never really gets back into their grasp. But instead of that, instead of benching Tua or getting on him, he throws 2 interceptions early, and he, talks confidence into him, gets him to sort of, bounce back, play with some poise here. And the way that Mike McDaniel does that is something that I wish more coaches took on, in that he is really particular and diligent with his touch distribution, and that's what you want to see. Tua had 50 attempts, 64% of those attempts went to Waddle and Tyreek. We have too often teams like the Chargers where your best playmakers out there are Eckler, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen. And I know that Keenan Allen was hurt, but I'm just talking about in terms of like week 1 usage. But there's no reason that DeAndre Carter should be leading your wide receivers in targets. There's no reason across the league, like with the Giants. As much as I love Brian Daboll, there's no reason that Richie James should have been leading the Giants in targets in week 1 or wide receivers. You should be extremely careful with how you're distributing your touches, and I think that McDaniel is. He also went for it on 4th and 1 from his own 35, just absolutely massive nuts. 3rd highest pass rate over expectation through 2 weeks at this point, so he's passing the ball a ton. He's going for it when he's supposed to. He's being really careful with how he distributes his touches. He knows that his touches are valuable, and he has playmakers up top on this team. He's now beaten Belichick and John Harbaugh in his first 2 games, maybe both of them on the road. I don't think the Patriots one was on the road, but still 2 wins against Super Bowl winning coaches, just everything you could ask for. Everything points to McDaniel being a really special coach up there with, the Sean McVay Wonder Boy type archetype. I think Tua, Tyreek, Waddle will all thrive moving forward. People were saying, how is Tua going to support Tyreek? How is he going to support Waddle? He's out here supporting both. They're both, I believe, probably like top 12 wide receivers through 2 weeks at this point. It's amazing. Everything that could have gone right in this offense has gone right. Now, I will say, what hasn't gone right, and I wanted to piggyback on the end of this point, just talking Dolphins, is we have a slight bummer here with Edmonds sort of not taking a back seat to Raheem Mostert, but this is now a clear 2-headed backfield. Raheem Mostert had 55% of the snaps, Chase Edmonds 51%. Mostert out-touched him 14-8. And it's pretty clear that this is going to be a two-way split where Edmonds is the passing down back, Mostert is between the tackles back. It's not great for Edmonds. It probably puts him from back-end RB2 to probably like firm RB3. And then I guess Mostert becomes interesting there, but it does cap the ceiling on Edmonds a little bit, where we thought Edmonds would be able to get more of the rushing work plus the receiving role. Now it seems like it's going to be just the receiving role and not very much of the between the tackles role. Just something to keep an eye on. I think Raheem Mostert, we'll probably talk about him later today on the waiver show. Or I guess this would be tomorrow on the waiver show for you guys. But it's something to monitor moving forward. Now, our next takeaway here is Jets. Jets, baby. Man, does it feel good to be a Jets fan for probably the first time since the Fitzpatrick days. Had to bring out the Jets hat. I have the Jets underdog shirt on. I don't currently have a jersey that fits me. We have the Elijah Moore jersey in the background. Man, oh man. Now, look, I'm a Jets fan. I know a lot of you guys are going to be annoyed by this. I'm not going to come on here every Monday and celebrate after a win. But I'm a Jets fan. We never get things to go right. We have the Mark Sanchez butt fumble. We have taking Christian Hackenberg with a second-round pick. We have Sam Darnold. It's been so ugly, fellas. We never get this kind of thing to happen to us, where we're down 30-17 with a minute 30 left, and we come back, we get an onside kick to bounce our way, and we win on the road. Huge win for Robert Saleh. Huge win for the Jets. Joe Flacco looked great. I think he had like 7.8 yards per attempt, like on a 10.5-yard ADOT. Not at all the kind of quarterback he was last week. And we're going to talk up the Jets players in a little bit, but I also do want to shine some light on LaFleur here, who LaFleur has actually surprised me a little bit here, where his play calling has been really good. I think his play designs have been great, and I think that his play calling, just in terms of his tendencies, has been great too. He's third in neutral drop back pass rate here. He's passing the ball on first downs. He ran the second most plays per 60 minutes last week with, I believe it was 84. He comes out this week, runs 70 plays. So now that would have been 9th last week. So we're running plays. We're playing fast. We're passing the ball. We're running good play designs. We're getting the ball into our playmakers' hands. I love what LaFleur has been doing. And getting the ball into our playmakers' hands leads us to Garrett Wilson here. Now, we're going to talk a bunch about this chart, but this is the rookie wide receiver report. I'm going to try and do it every week, where I have the route participation in week 1, route participation in week 2, their total targets, their target per out run, their yards per out run. And Garrett Wilson goes from 56.5% of the routes to 78.7% of the routes. So he goes from like a rotational wide receiver 4 to now he's firmly in 3 wide receiver sets on this team. 30% plus target per out run, 2+ yards per out run, had 14 targets for 8 catches, 102 yards, and 2 touchdowns this week for 30 points in fantasy. Insane. Now, I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but we're going to talk about Drake London in a second, but Drake London and Garrett Wilson up top here, I mean, we're looking at it right here, 30% plus targets per out run for both of them north of 78% of the routes this week. 2+ yards per out run. This does look like, sort of like that 2020 class where you had Jefferson and you had CeeDee Lamb up top looking amazing right out the gate. I'm not saying that Drake London and Garrett Wilson are going to be that, but they are certainly on the trajectory through 2 games at this point. Now, with all the Garrett Wilson love that's out there, also, if that 78.7% route participation sticks and he gets into the 80% plus route participation every single week, he's probably a wide receiver, high-end wide receiver 3 moving forward. You can now begin to start Garrett Wilson in your fantasy lineups. He's already climbed the depth chart. Now, the reason I'm not super worried about Elijah Moore yet is because of this. He hasn't leapfrogged Elijah Moore. This is the route participation in week 1 and then in week 2. So Elijah Moore is 89% route participation in week 1, then 94% in week 2. So he's still that guy. He's still leading all wide receivers in routes, 94%. I know the targets aren't there. I think they're going to be there soon, but they still view him at least within those walls on that team as their wide receiver 1. He's out there on 94% of the routes. He's running the most routes across the whole team. The thing that's interesting, though, Garrett Wilson at 75%, Corey Davis at 75%, Braxton Berrios from 47 to 22. Here's a small issue here. Berrios had some kind of heel injury going into this game, some kind of injury, which might have held him back. And it seems like Garrett Wilson took snaps from him and not from Corey Davis, where Garrett Wilson goes up in snaps, Corey Davis goes up in snaps. The hope would be that either Braxton Berrios gets phased out of this offense, or when Braxton Berrios is healthy and is a slot wide receiver again, that Garrett Wilson leapfrogs Corey Davis. Now, as long as Garrett Wilson ascending up this depth chart doesn't revert Elijah Moore to like 80% or less of the routes, he's still looking good. He's still on the field in most situations as their wide receiver one. So it's something to just keep it, something to monitor here moving forward, where as long as he's not eating into Elijah Moore's routes, we're good. If Garrett Wilson can leapfrog Corey Davis and Berrios, and we just have Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson on 90% plus of the snaps, with Corey Davis and Braxton Berrios rotating in depending on where they want Wilson or Elijah Moore in the slot, right? Like if they want Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson on the perimeter, then sure, Berrios should be in there in 3 wide receiver sets. If they want, Garrett Wilson in the slot for whatever play it is, then Corey Davis should be on the outside. We'll see if that happens. I'm not sure yet, but it's going to be tough for them to work Berrios back in and having to take Wilson's snaps down. But one more thing with the Jets is the running back room is kind of the biggest downfall here, where I feel really good about this passing game. I feel really good about the play calling. I even feel good. I even think when Zach Wilson comes back, we're going to be looking good as well. I will say it is a toss-up, honestly, if they even want to put Zach Wilson in the minute that he can play, if Joe Flacco is going to play like this. I mean, again, he had an amazing game. We'll see. But with the running backs here, we had a really clean, pretty much 50-50 split in week 1. Breece Hall and Michael Carter looked great in week 1. And now we have Ty Johnson in the mix. Ty Johnson gets 19% of the snaps, 3 opportunities this game. If this backfield becomes a 3-headed committee, Breece Hall and Carter are no longer, RB2 streamers. It's really whoever's the lead back, which right now it's Carter. Hopefully eventually it's Hall. It's tough. Breece Hall on a per-touch basis looked amazing today. I don't know why his snaps went down in favor of Ty Johnson. That's probably the one takeaway from this LaFleur stuff that is a little bit annoying. I don't know why this happened. I mean, it is only a 1-game trend. It didn't happen last game. We'll see moving forward. It's something to monitor. If this becomes a 3-headed backfield for the rest of the season, that really puts a damper on Hall and Carter. We'll see if it sticks, though. Now, I'll take off my Jets hat so you guys can see the entire dome piece that I got on me here. And we'll talk about Drake London, who is also that guy, just like Garrett Wilson, where when we look at these stats again, dude, 32% targets per out run, 2.76 yards per out run. Like, again, Jefferson CD vibes, Jefferson CD T Higgins, whatever you want to do. Whatever draft class you want to talk about, the top 2 guys emerging early, that has been these 2 guys. Both of these wide receivers, Drake London and Garrett Wilson, both top 16 in points per game. I have hair on my glasses now. But they're both top 16 in points per game, which is really rare for rookies to come out here and produce that early. I think I would almost be comfortable with moving both into the top 12 as dynasty wide receivers. Both of them are at worst wide receiver 3s for me rest of season in redraft. Now, on the other side of the Drake London gas, just like with Garrett Wilson, it's like, oh, Garrett Wilson's been great. Elijah Moore hasn't been great, though. With Drake London, I'm still not pressing the panic button. I got the panic button out. I've lifted the case. I've lifted the glass up, and the panic button is there. But I haven't touched it yet with Kyle Pitts. I haven't smashed it yet. I don't think you have to yet. I don't think you have to just yet, man. Drake London, he was amazing. He's not going to see a 46% target share every week. He had a 46% target share this week. He did amazing. But Kyle Pitts had an elite route participation, where last week he was actually pass blocking a little bit more than we would like. He was in like that 70% route participation area. He was on a route 91% of the time this week. Now, that only resulted in a 13% target share, 3 targets, 2 catches, 19 yards. But for a tight end, you're going to have off days like that. He's running routes. He was commanding targets last week. Now you just need him to run routes, command targets on the same week, and be in a plus matchup. Those days are coming very soon. I don't think the dream is over just yet. 2 dud games in a row for a tight end is not unheard of at all. I do think that we are gearing up here for a Kyle Pitts blow-up game in the next couple weeks. We'll see how it goes, but again, I wouldn't full-on panic just yet on Pitts. I think that there's still hope. The usage has been good. The underlying usage has been good. We've seen Arthur Smith future tight ends. We've seen Marcus Mariota future tight ends. He's getting the usage that we want. I do think the targets are coming. I think the production is coming. I would just hold on tight for now. Now, I want to do this fourth takeaway I have is the rookie wide receiver roundup, where I just want to talk through the rest of these guys. So we talked about Garrett Wilson in London. Olave is another one that stuck out, where Chris Olave only had 11 points this week. But when we dig a little bit deeper, the usage was elite. I think Olave is somebody where you have to look at a little bit deeper than what he produced. He had a 32.5% target share this week, which is really solid. 13 targets on the day. 334 air yards. I think that's like a silly amount of air yards. He was targeted downfield a ton. Just didn't connect on a lot of them with Jameis Winston in a game that was kind of in garbage time, but still really promising. You know, all of those unrealized air yards downfield. I believe his expected points is in like the 20-ish plus points per game. So a little bit of a buy low opportunity here where his volume was crazy, his usage was crazy, the points just didn't really get there. Now, he also increased his route participation just barely, but he's now at a 20% plus target per out run on the year, 1.64 yards per out run. He looks like a solid wide receiver at this point, not with the Jefferson and CDs of the world, but he looks kind of like what Devonta Smith, Elijah Moore were looking like last year. Maybe a little bit worse than that, but super promising is what I'll say. Now, Jahan Dotson's getting a lot of love, and it's impressive that he's already the wide receiver 2 on this depth chart, right? He has 100% route participation in week 2 after having 88% last week. The only issue is that he's not commanding a ton of volume, only a 10% target per out run, 1 yard per out run. So he's not super efficient. He's been catching a lot of touchdowns, which is good. I would just say I wouldn't put Dotson up into the Wilson London tier as like one of these rookie wide receivers that looks amazing. Like, he's looked good, don't get me wrong. But his production and his fantasy point output has been a little bit touchdown dependent for what I would like to see. Now, the guys who are trending down a little bit here, George Pickens. It's great to see him rising up the depth chart. He is very clearly the wide receiver 3 on this team. He's out there for 94.7% of the routes this week, 90% the week before. The issue is he's not doing anything with them. He's running pretty much wind sprints out there. He's putting up the Tony Snell stat line where he ran a shit ton of routes, only 8.2% target per out run, 0.36 yards per out run. That has to go up. Again, it's a positive sign that he's on the field, but we're going to need him to command targets sooner or later, or it's going to be a little bit ugly here. Sky Moore, I would be freaking out on a little bit more than Pickens. He goes from a part-time 17% route participation guy in week 1 to not running a single route in week 2. It's looking rough. He had the one big gain in week 1. I'm still not dropping Sky Moore, but I am panicking a little bit where you want the route participation to climb up and climb up and climb up. It seems like Justin Watson leapfrogged him on the depth chart after week 1, which is not a good sign at all. Again, I wouldn't drop Sky Moore. I would give him another 2 to 3 weeks to try and get to like 50% plus of the routes. If he can't get there by like week 4, week 5, then we're cutting then we're cutting Sky Moore. Next guy we'll talk about here, somebody who we're not cutting, Rhamondre Stevenszn. My fifth takeaway here is Rhamondre Stevenszn isn't dead just yet. In these next few bullet points, we're going to just talk through some busy backfields, some ambiguous backfields. And Rhamondre Stevenszn only had 6.1 points this week. If you started him, you were pretty disappointed. But I want to say that there was some promise here. And this is a tweet from Dwayne McFarland where he said, Rhamondre Stevenszn took over much of the primary passing work for New England in week 2 with Ty Montgomery out. And this is really promising where Ty Montgomery gets hurt. That James White role of the receiving down back stuff is available. And instead of Pierre Strong or instead of any of those depth running backs that the Patriots have, coming up and making this a 3-man committee still, it became a 2-man committee where Rhamondre Stevenszn came out here. He played for 62% of the snaps. So he led all of the backs in snaps. Even though Damian Harris outscored him, he led all the running backs in snaps. He had a 32% rush attempt share, which isn't that bad. Damian Harris had like 54%. He ran a route on 58% of the 58% of the routes. In elite route participation, it's like 60% plus, 65% plus. He's right on the cusp of that. 57% of the long down distance snaps, 100% of the 2-minute drill. He was the passing down back, and then he was also mixing in between the tackles. This is what we wanted. I think the game script just didn't really allow him to go off here, and he didn't command a ton of targets. I don't think that keeps up, where we have a full sample from last year where he was a 21% target per out run guy, which would have put him at a 15% target share if he saw that same rate on the amount of routes that he ran this weekend. So I think that we should see his target share get to like the 10 to 15% area. We should see him still mix in for like 8 to 12 carries on a week. Strong positives for the future if this role with him taking the passing down stuff sticks. I think he might even be somebody that will be on our buy low list for Wednesday or Thursday whenever we come out with that video. Then we'll talk about the Etienne James Robinson split. And I probably should have came up with a more creative name for this here. But it's definitely time. Sadly, Etienne is not like Kyle Pitts. The panic button is fully out for Etienne. And it really sucks, man. This is, at this point, a 65-35 split where J-Rob played 63% of the snaps, Etienne played 37%. And that would work in some cases, but Etienne's passing down work isn't enough. He's only running a route on 45% of dropbacks. That would need to be like 65% plus for him to still be effective on only 21% of the rush attempts. It's really bad. They did win 24-0 versus the Colts, so it was a game script that benefited James Robinson. I do think in games where they're underdogs by a touchdown and it's garbage time and they're running a lot of plays and they're in the 2-minute drill, then Etienne will get some play there as like an RB3 type. But he essentially right now, Etienne, the way I see him is almost like a McKissick, Nyheim Hines, where if the Jags are in the right game script, then you can fire him up as an RB2 streamer. Outside of that, you kind of need an injury to the starter for him to be fantasy relevant, which really sucks. He still does have upside to, sort of earn his role back if he just makes an explosive play here and there. We'll see. It's been tough, man. He dropped a bunch of passes in week 1. He fumbled in week 1. Every single spot that the coaches had given him to rise up the depth chart, make a play, he screwed up. So he might just be that guy. He might just not be the player we thought he was going to be. It doesn't make a ton of sense to me. He was a great prospect. He's with his college quarterback. I don't know why he's dropping passes. I don't know. I don't know if it's a mental error, him coming back from an injury, pretty much redshirting for an entire year. We'll see. But again, for now, I would treat Etienne like a Hines, like a McKissick type, and I would treat James Robinson as a fringe. Pretty much I would call him like a high-end RB3 that's great for, hero RB, zero RB teams at this point. And then we have another headache of a running back split between Darrell Henderson and Cam Akers here. And I don't even know what to make of this one. We have Henderson out-snapping Akers 56% to 43%. Henderson scores a touchdown, and he plays on most of the passing downs. But on the other end, Akers out-touches Henderson 18 to 10 on less snaps. So I have no clue what to make of this backfield at this point. It's pretty much a clean 50-50 split in this week after it being Darrell Henderson's bell cow workload in week 1. And I think I would be lying if I told you guys that I had a concrete takeaway of this is how the backfield is going to be. My guess is they wanted to see what Akers would look like at game speed in a game that they pretty much had under control for most of it. The Falcons were never really challenging them until like the last 2-3 minutes when they got like a lucky fumble. Maybe they just wanted to see what Akers looked like. We'll see. My guess is Henderson is the 1A. Henderson probably will get favored on the goal line. He's the passing down back. And then we have Akers kind of just mixing in between the 20s. It's going to be tough to know when to start each, where Henderson was a guy that I was comfortable starting as like a top 20 running back last week. Now he's more on the fringe of, 25 to 32-ish. Akers, I still don't think you can start yet, unless if you're down bad. I would have him probably late 30s, early 40s in terms of running back rankings, but this will be a headache. I don't think that an even split like this will last for long, though. It's just a headache for the short term. McVay almost always features a bell cow. Then we have Javonte RB1 season. Now, I know that the points weren't exactly there. He didn't have a crazy day or anything, but the usage was really promising. We wanted, going to the season, people were saying, oh, they're just going to do a clean 50-50 split like they did last year. Well, this tells us 65-35 split on the snaps is really promising. 19 touches to Melvin Gordon's 11 touches. Javonte also saw 100% of the goal line work. He had a 60% plus route participation, which is really, really strong. And Gordon only ran 8 routes. So he has the goal line work. He has a bigger passing down role than Gordon. And it's a 65-35 split. So I know the points haven't been there, but Javonte does feel like, I'm not going to call him Jonathan Taylor last year because I don't think he's going to be the RB1 overall in the season. But Jonathan Taylor, through 2 or 3 weeks, had all the goal line work, all the touches, all the usage looked good, and the points just didn't come until week 4, week 5, week 6. I think we're looking at something very similar with Javonte here. The main issue for Javonte is the coaching staff. These Green Bay OC turned head coaches have been so bad, man. Hackett gets a delay of game on a field goal in this game where he couldn't decide if he wanted to go for it on fourth or kick a field goal. He gets a delay of game. He ends up having to punt it. Just so ugly. 16 points per game at this point with Russell Wilson on his offense through 2 games playing against the Seahawks and the Texans, 2 teams who aren't that good. Of course, we know the Seahawks game where he kicks a 64-yard field goal when he had plenty of time to try and get closer. Ugly all around from Nathaniel Hackett. He might get fired before they even get to their bye week. I think I'm getting a little bit Skip Bayless with that take, but dude, he's been legitimately that bad. And then you have Luke Getsy as well. Luke Getsy coming from Green Bay to the Bears, awful last night. You have Justin Fields on the goal line. Some of us out here, like me, started him in some places, and we would have loved another rushing touchdown for Justin Fields. And he runs out of the shotgun on goal line, which in of itself is weird. Where if you're within a yard of the goal line and you're in shotgun, I don't understand why you're not just, if you're that close, take the snap under center, sneak it, fullback dive, play action bootleg, find the fullback in the flat, anything other than shotgun in that spot. And not only that, if it's shotgun and they run a pass play, right? Fine. I guess that can work. But they go shotgun and they run almost a QB sneak out of shotgun on the 1 yard line. Just awful by Luke Getsy. Only 11 pass attempts on the night in a game where they were down the entire time outside of their first drive. Just not good. Just not good. And it sucks to see, man. It feels like they're setting up Justin Fields to fail. It feels like Justin Fields isn't the quarterback of the future for them, so they don't really care what's going on with him. It doesn't feel like they want to set him up to succeed. It feels like they're tanking for a quarterback in 2023. It sucks all around for this Bears offense. I think something has to change soon, or Fields, Mooney, Kmet, none of them are really startable at this point, and it sucks, man. Just at this point, if we're going to be in games down so much like this, just throw the ball. Let Fields win you games. I know he threw a pick on his 11 attempts tonight, but when he can't get into a rhythm and feel out the defense, and he's not actively coming up to the line and sort of diagnosing what's going on and having to deal with their passing concepts and their zones, I think it's tough to give him 11 pass attempts. I think they only give him 9 pass attempts in the last game, or 8. So bad from Luke Getsy. I don't understand. I don't know. I guess I just don't know what there is to hide with Justin Fields. I get that he's a young quarterback. He's going to make mistakes, but just let him make mistakes. We just saw Tua throw 2 picks in the first half and then come back and play well. It does. There's really not much we can do. It does just suck. And then we have something that I didn't really think was going to happen coming into the season. It was sort of an overlooked storyline, but Todd Bowles is holding back this Tampa Bay offense, which I didn't really expect. Where Todd Bowles, it was a weird move in the offseason where Bruce Arians steps down to this front office role and Todd Bowles becomes the head coach. Now, as a Jets fan, as you guys know, I was looking for my hat, but I don't know where it went. I have some experience with Todd Bowles. He was the coach for the Jets for a while. He was the coach on the Fitzpatrick team with Decker and Marshall, if I'm remembering that correctly. I think I might be remembering that wrong. That might have been Rex Ryan still. I don't know. But still, he was okay for the Jets, but he's a defensive-minded guy, and he's definitely one of these guys like a Vic Fangio, in my opinion. As a Jets fan, just somebody that he's coached the Jets before. I think the move for a lot of these teams, like with McVay, with Mike McDaniel, all of these guys, Andy Reid, it's probably best if you have a offensive play caller as your head coach. Todd Bowles is a defensive mastermind, and like I just said, same thing sort of happened with Vic Fangio. I think Vic Fangio is a defensive mastermind, but when you make them the head coach of a team and they have to worry about the game plan, and they're game planning for the offense as well as the defense, and they're not really delegating as much as you'd like, and they're kind of running the offense and just running the team the way that they see fit, it gets a little bit sticky. And that's what we saw here with the Buccaneers, where they go from second in neutral pass rate from 2020 and 2021 to 25th through 2 weeks here. So they still have Brian Leftwich calling plays, same guy is calling plays, but Todd Bowles comes in here and is just slowing down the offense. He wants to establish the run more, and that's always kind of been his game plan. I do think that he is one of these guys that would just be better as a defensive coordinator. I think it was a mistake to not promote Byron Leftwich instead of Todd Bowles for the Buccaneers. Now, we're really early. They're 2-0. They're winning games, whatever. Maybe they prove me wrong, but just for the maximum benefit of this offense, Todd Bowles coming in here and kind of taking away from what Bruce Arians likes to do is going to hurt, at the very least, the fantasy players on this team. Now, that is going to do it for us today. That is my top 10 takeaways from week 2 of the NFL season. I hope that was a good one for you guys. I think it was insightful. I think it was fun. Let me know if I could tweak this format at all. I know some people said it was a little bit long, but I think that's kind of the beauty of these. I get to just sort of talk and dump my brain from what I watched yesterday. But I have to work on the waiver wire video for tomorrow. So I'm going to get out of here, eat lunch, get to grinding. I hope all of you guys are winning your matchups. We have two really good games tonight. We have one really good game tonight. We have a pretty garbage game with the Bills and Titans, but doubleheader on Monday is going to be fun. Hope all of you guys have a fun Monday night. You guys enjoy our last day of football until Thursday. Feels like an eternity. But as always, if you enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.
I got the juice, I got the juice.
Channel, Chatham's on. Foolies glad I'm home. Even my haters kinda glad I'm on. Rest in peace to my vagabond. Rapper, song, singer, suspended, subpoena from misdemeanors.